Hello and welcome to the Reds Report, part to be proud of the TalkSport network of fans. Ian is not with us this evening due to work obligations, so we've got with us one of the voices of South Yorkshire football, friend of the show, and the one we're relying on to give us some useful information that our listeners will really enjoy listening to. It is Adam Oxley. Good evening, Adam.
Good evening.
And then, of course, Steve
and
and myself
me.
make up. Steve and myself make
anyway,
up. I do have to say before we start, it's been a couple of weeks since we've recorded because besides Barnsley fans, you know, we are husbands, we are dads, foster carers, we work, lots goes off. And when there's three of us, you know, sometimes things pop up and it just means that we can't record. I have some really, which I'll share in our WhatsApp group, Steve, some really lovely messages from people just saying, hope everybody's all right, missed you. Steve, not this Steve, but another Steve message saying, genuinely hope you're all right. He says, but the agreement with the missus is, if you put something out on a Thursday, I can watch it on the 65-inch TV on Friday instead of the soaps. So every week we don't do it, he's forced to watch Emmerdale or Coronation Street. So, Steve, thanks to have you with us. And just tell your lass to watch Emmerdale later on +1 or whatever. But
I can't think of no worse than watching us three on a 65-inch telly. Can you think it'll keep kids off fire, won't it? If fire's underneath, bloody hell.
I will put it in front of the window on a night like tonight, and nobody will come knocking, guaranteed.
You're right there.
It is Halloween, and I thought if you could have some sort of spooky names. Now, I couldn't come up with anything, so I used an internet Halloween name generator. Steve, tonight you are Icy Goblin Killer. Not bad. Adam, you will be known as Spooky Vampire Whisperer.
Spooky Vampire
Whisperer. That's all right, that one.
Yeah.
He's not doing any goblin, is he?
No. Ian is a cursed skeleton catcher. But you know, it was probably set up by a 12-year-old when I put my name in and I became dangerous cobweb sucker. Anyway, that's just how we came up.
Wow, okay.
That's it. I'll have to say credit to the Barnsley FC social media team, whoever runs that these days, because they came up with a Barnsley Halloween 11. Kyron Haunted House. Yeah. Sam Cosgrave. Oh, okay. Fabio Jalloween.
That's good.
Davis Killer Dunn.
Like
that. Yeah. Connor Rihan. I quite like that. Be practicing all day. Rihan. And then we have Corey O'Treat, Josh Earl and Hyde, Mark Robbo, I don't know, Burry Cutter, and Ben Killip. It's not bad. And I saw earlier on, Adam, that you and your colleagues have brought out a South Yorkshire one as well. Have you got it handy by any chance?
I have got it handy, yes. I have got it handy. So
you'll have to excuse us because you'll have to say who the player is if they're not Barnsley.
Yeah, of course. Understandable. Well, we also had Sam Cosgrave in there. So that's good to see all being joined up. But our keeper was Demon Phillips. So that's Dylan Phillips of Rotherham.
Yeah.
And then we had a back four of Poltergeist Valentin. So Paul Valentin. Tomb Anderson at Doncaster. Anel Ahmed Hodwich at Sheffield United. And Hakeem a Coffin at Rotherham instead of a Doffin. Which I like that one. Jezerin Rakspooky at Sheffield United instead of Raksaki. Yeah. Then Phantom Naylor at Chesterfield. Svante Ingulson at Wednesday. Wow. And then Liam Mandeville. Yeah, so we'll go with that. And then up front with Sam Cosgrave was Sam Zombie instead of Sam Nombi.
Oh, it's not bad, is it? Every day.
Managed by Paul Spook at Chesterfield.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
People actually get paid for doing this. We do it for free, but y'all lot get paid for doing that today.
To be fair, that was mainly me. So, yes, I did. Yeah.
Good lad.
The others, Andy and Rob will be taking some of the credit, but Adam, well done. Well, if you talk about trick or treat, mainly treats for Barnsley FC fans since the international break. We went into the break on the back of 2 defeats against Rotherham. We come back, a draw at home against Charlton, which, at home, the form hasn't been great, so at least not to lose, fantastic. And then a very decent away win at Shrewsbury. Steve, he talked a lot about, before the international break, not knowing his best 11 and everything else. It seems that he's used that time where there were no matches very wisely, because something feels a little bit different about the team.
Yeah, you've got to agree with that. 2 definitely better performances. I still wonder whether he does know his best 11, but I think he's getting nearer. But yeah, a lot more positives than negatives. So we don't have to be negative today, as Adam seems to always point out when he's talking to me.
Not always.
Not always, no. Adam Phillips is back in training, though, isn't he, mate?
Full training.
Just a little sprinkling of negativity to keep him on the toes.
Got to do, haven't you, mate? Got to do.
And he talked, Adam, about some of the younger players that we've got on loan. Much was made about the keeper, about making some errors, and it's an awkward spot, because if you make an error as a keeper, it most likely costs you. If you miss a tackle or something in midfield, you've still got some lads on the other side. And Matty Craig, who was almost an ever present, both of them were dropped for the last game. Is it, when he mentioned about younger players, is that to protect? Is that give them a little bit of a lesson, an incentive to do better, or maybe a mixture of both? Because I saw some comments that they didn't think it was fair, to pick out these lads. But they are loan players. They have played at completely different levels. And it's hard, isn't it, getting regular football in League One?
Yeah, certainly. I think it was the right decision. I had a conversation with Darryl last week around this, because there'd been increasingly frustrated noises from multiple people on social and on our phone in and other things around Slonina. A little less so around Craig, but people were talking about Matty Craig as well. Look, these are 2 very talented young players. I think Barnsley have done well to get hold of, but they are exactly that. They are young players. Matty Craig hasn't played consistently at this level before, did well at Doncaster in League 2 last season. Slonina has obviously done some stuff on the international stage. He's clearly come through some Chelsea ranks and some other ways, and they've both had decent games so far this season. But they're also going to make mistakes. This is the gamble that you take when you bring loanees from the Premier League who are young players. So you've kind of got to take your medicine a bit, that you're not going to get the finished article, which is the nature of the beast. If they were the finished article, they probably wouldn't be on loan at Barnsley, and that's no offence to Barnsley or anywhere where the clubs are. But I do think it was a sensible move to kind of not just take them out the firing line, but maybe remind them that they're not going to be automatic picks every week. I still back both players. I think he will put Slonina back in at some point. Killip did all right. Obviously, kept a clean sheet at Shrewsbury, and he's a fairly kind of useful goalkeeper. I definitely think goalkeeper is an area where you could recruit a bit of experience in January to improve the team. And with Matty Craig, look, he's going to keep coming in, come out. You'll see some good games. You might see some other bits. I like the kid. I've been spoke to him a bit. Yeah. But look, Darryl has shown he's not afraid to make decisions before games, in games, between games, and whether the discussions in the media on social prompted anything, whether they were going to do it already, I don't think it was the worst thing in the world, and it probably will help both of them, at least in the short term.
Mm. The interesting was when I wrote down some players after the last result. So we take the Bristol Street trophy out, because it was whilst I was arguing with somebody, it wasn't pointless to Doncaster. And I think it's an ideal opportunity for some of the young ones to run out, but we're not going to talk about it as such. But when you look at the 2-0 win over Shrewsbury, I wrote, 5 players down. And I think the funny thing is, 5-6 weeks ago, these would have all been on the bench if fit. Because what I think's made a difference in the lineup, the last 2 matches, that have sort of stood out to me are Humphrey, Gent, O'Keefe, Russell, Watters. And I think it's fair to say that would be a bench normally, or at least 5 of the 8 or however many you've got on the bench. Talk about Humphreys first, Steve. I mean, he arrived late. He wasn't fit. We knew all that. But when we saw snippets, I know you've said a couple of times, there's something about him that you like. That you saw something in him that you think that could just be, if he's fit, that could be the striker that we maybe.
Well, he's got that look, Auntie. You look at him and, you wouldn't want to. He'll be out tonight making a fortune because he'll be freaking at little kids, definitely. Some touches he came out with of the last couple of games. I mean, that back heel nutmeg that he knocked down line. Yeah, he's obviously got some really good skills, and I think he's settling in now. It looks as though he's settling in. He's definitely getting fitter. He's getting match fit. He looks to have a bit of a turn of pace on him. But yeah, I like the look of him before he'd even kicked a ball. But I must admit, I do like him. I do like him even more now.
I think what stood out over the last couple of matches, Adam, the relationship, or could we say the pedigree that he shares with Keeler Dunn, they seem to be able to find each other. And I know the celebration when one dumps all the other one's back, and they were that shows a unity that we've not really seen. I know players always congratulate each other when somebody scores a goal or a keeper saves a penalty. It just stood out for me because I think little sort of like relationships are forming, and that can only be for the better of the team, can't it?
Yeah, it takes time. Look, and time, as many of our local managers have talked about, and patience are 2 factors that you rarely get in football. But it does take a bit of time. And look, they both did come in very late in the window, so we're always playing catch up right on deadline day. And I agree with Steve. I really like the look of Humphreys. Clearly he's not been consistent enough and not done it enough previously, which is why he's where he is in his career. But I also think there's something about him coming in off the out wide, coming in, got a great shot on him. There's a bit of housery about him. There's a steal about him. And Keeler Dunn, for me, will just get better, really. He had a scoring in his opening game, clearly kind of set the mark there, and it's taken him a few games really to really start clicking. But I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm encouraged by the kind of forward unit as a whole more at Barnsley. There's points at which maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago you were looking at every single player and having a few questions over them. But even like Max Watters is contributing more than I thought he would do. Cosgrove just offers you something different. Jallo's the one that's got a big kind of question mark on him, really, in a number of ways. Yeah. His attitude in terms of some of his diving and his antics and other things needs to be kicked out of him quite quickly. And for the talent he's got, he can offer a bit more. But again, he's young. He's learning. I think he probably needs to do a bit of growing up in many senses within the team, but there's definitely a talent in there.
Do you not think he's carrying a bit of weight at the minute? It looks to me as though he's carrying a bit of weight. He doesn't look as quick, as nippy as he did. He just
maybe so.
A little bit more. I don't know. Maybe he's bulking up, like you say. He's growing up and bulking up.
Maybe so. Yeah, but I just look at it as a whole now from an attacking perspective. And just think there's a little bit more there to work at than at some points you were kind of looking to January and thinking, oh crikey, you might need at least one or two more. But if all of them can stay fit, there's goals within that unit now.
Yeah, it's hard with Jallow, isn't it? Because from the 23s to League One is a huge step. It's man's football with characters, with it changes. And when you've got a player that's got the promise that he has, he's probably, dare I say, he's not being sent out on loan because they clearly feel he should be challenging or he can play parts. But then when you're on the pitch, it's like you say, sometimes he gets the ball and he runs it and you think, that's it. But then you see the dives. And I wonder if he gets a goal, some of that will say, because it just feels that he patience is maybe wearing out a bit. He gets frustrated really quick. And those are things you can only learn in a match situation. That under the 23, it don't matter there, doesn't it, almost? He just needs to. But it's a phase that, people are talking about on that. And I think with the experience that we have on the pitch, as well as in the dugout, I'm sure somebody will be talking to him. And it keeps getting the chances. What about the wings, though? Gent and O'Keefe, like everybody was talking about Barry Cotter, what a player he's been and blah, blah, blah. Finds himself almost not frozen out because he's coming on, but losing his starting position. I'm
surprised. I'm surprised with Cotter. I've got to be honest, because Cotter were probably one of our best players at the beginning of the season, and I don't know. It just really dropped out of favour. O'Keefe's come in, done a decent job. Fair enough. But it does seem a bit of an odd one. But I think the revelation is Gent. He looks really settled now on that left-hand side. He looks positive going forward. He's not scared. For a young kid, he's not scared to get his foot in. Definitely a breath of fresh air. And for me, at minute, he's first one on the team sheet. I've got to be honest. He looks a class above.
And this is, I think, we don't know because it's always speculating. It just feels that the gaffer or the coaching team, should I say, because it's not just the gaffer, Horan's there and Stad's there, Devaney's there. I think they found what makes people tick, like on an individual basis. And some, like Jello, might need the arm around the shoulder and having a word, whereas others need the threat of not playing to bring the best out and showing them, nothing's guaranteed. One of the other revelations, if we could call it a revelation, Adam, is Big John Russell. Played the last couple of times, scored. I can't understand he didn't get the Ballon d'Or for that, but obviously he didn't get it. Fantastic, instinctive volley, I think we can say it. And I've never really seen him as like, a goal threat, but that was very instinctive, wasn't it? Sort of like
never seen him as any threat. Never mind hotels, never mind a goal threat.
But Adam, probably in a slightly more forward position, he seems to have found. Well, I wouldn't say his feet because that wouldn't be fair to him, but he's more effective for the team, and he shines a bit brighter, playing a little bit more forward.
Look, essentially going into the international break, some big questions were being asked. Look, I was at Huddersfield for the first of the 2-0 defeats, and it was pretty woeful. Huddersfield weren't great themselves. The performance asked loads of questions. Darryl had some awkward questions to answer, and they then had a couple of weeks to go away and try and work things out. And a lot has changed, and a few of the things are the players that you've mentioned. The balance with Gent coming back in, but also Russell. And look, we at Blackpool saw Connell drop a bit deeper. It's kind of was that link between the back line, which helps. But the surprise was to see, I know Phillips obviously was, I think he played part of that one, but was to see Russell in that more advanced role. It's something that we kind of saw Russell as Luca Connell's understudy or backup for that defensive role. And I was impressed on that day. And since then, goals come. And he looks a different player. And I didn't have John Russell probably anywhere near a regular or irregular starting role in the team, even a month ago or 6 weeks ago. And we've said that a few times.
Yeah.
But you consider him differently now, as you do with some of the others. But he will be a real bonus if he can continue to play on a consistent basis in there and gives options. Look, it asks questions of Craig, it asks questions of Phillips, it asks questions of whatever else, and Connell and everyone else, and they can rotate a little bit. Phillips could drop in if Luca Connell goes and vice versa. So it gives a bit of versatility as well. And we know what Darryl Clark's like in terms of how he likes to flip formations and mix things up. So, yeah, I'd pleasantly surprised, I think is a good way of putting it, with John Russell in recent weeks.
And what was also pleasing is obviously Earl missed through 5 yellow cards or whatever. So the back three of Roberts, Pines, and de Juvigny, a clean sheet. And people saying, "Oh, but you played Shrewsbury." You still have to beat them, don't you? It's still an away match. You still have to beat what's in front of you, which we did, but also not conceding. And ultimately, like a 3-4-2-1 formation almost. And Waters, I mean, Steve. I know we've took the mick out of him at times because,
he's being called from a pig to a dog, Auntie. Let's be honest. Last season, especially, and beginning of this season, you wouldn't have had him driving coach in your mind anyway, near first team. But he's persevered, and there's always been a footballer in there. There's always been something in there. It was just a case of him getting the breaks. Getting the game time, because this is what it's coming down to. You can't come on for the last 10, 15 minutes for 3 or 4 games and expect to beat next Pelly. But they've given him some game time. He's looked a lot sharper. He's certainly got a turn of pace, which is still sadly lacking at times in our team, I'm afraid. But he's definitely got that pace. And he can finish. He can finish. And I think him up front with Humphreys, to me at the minute, is your starting pair.
Yeah, I mean, in Shrewsbury, it was sort of like Humphreys and Keeler Dunn maybe just in front of the midfield with an out-and-out strike, obviously them. But those three, I mean, like Steve says, Andy, if you're looking for goals between Waters, Keeler Dunn and Humphreys, that's where the goals should be coming from, and not that much reliance on people like Connell or Russell to. I mean, of course they can chip in if they want, but those three see the chemistry starting a bit, and obviously now the goal tally will increase as well because Cosgrove we talked about earlier, Cosgrave this evening, again didn't get much of a look in last year because of Devante Cole. Played absolutely fantastic in those 2 matches against Bolton. And we were all saying, well, that's our number 9. We're right. But then, again, and it could be service, maybe self-confidence. I don't know. I think it's rough when you're the build that he is because everything always goes against him, even if it's not. But as we look ahead, it seems that he's found a formation that works and players to fulfill that formation, which is good. And a little bit of talk about the fan engagement. I watched some of it on YouTube. I'll ask you both. I'll ask you first, Adam. It's hard, isn't it? Let's face it. I think it's fantastic for the club to put it on, and I mean that by the bottom of my heart. There's probably lots of South Yorkshire clubs that don't have an evening with the CEO and the head of football and everything else. I think it's something about realistic expectations of what people want, because they're not going to give away, the balance sheet or how much that player cost or how much this cost. And the story from the evening was a bit, in League One, it's hard with the fan base we have, and we're surrounded by cities with big teams, so we need to make do with what we've got. There's been another cash injection by the owners. There is now that the stadium belongs to Barnsley Council, there's going to be a permanent fan base. So rather than some gazebos, which is positive news. But I think ultimately for Barnsley to do anything, any worthwhile investment, the message really was you need to be in the Championship where there is far more money to do so. Some people unhappy about these fan engagements, but you as a South Yorkshire sports journalist, you can't knock the club for putting it on, can you? To be able to sit there and take the criticism or the questions, whether they can answer, but it's a different question, of course.
100%. Look, as custodians, owners, whatever you want to call these people, football clubs have always been more than the sum of their parts. They're community assets. So yes, there's the game, there's the business, there's all the different aspects of it. So a key part of that is being held to account, both by people in the press like myself and the media, and supporters and other stakeholders and investors and whatever else. And I do think events like that are important. Not every one of our local club does them, so I think it is important to do it. Depending on how much information you want to give out, what you want to say, it can be frustrating to certain people when you don't get answers and sometimes you won't get a straight answer, and sometimes you'll get answers that you don't want. And the fact that Barnsley haven't got, endless pots of cash, and that the owners are keep having to put money in, and that there's money being lost, and that players are probably still going to have to be sold, and all this kind of stuff, isn't what people will want to hear. People will want to hear that come January that there's going to be more money and 3 or 4 new players coming in and everything else. Football's it's such a ridiculous industry, with different expectations placed upon it than any other business when we talk about it from a business sense. It is difficult. I think there's been a lot of players sold over the last few years. The squad hasn't seen that money reinvested into it. I honestly don't think that the current squad of players is as good from a technical and a talent perspective as the last couple of seasons. Players left the year before with the Duff season. Players have left in the summer, and it's not been like-for-like replacements. So anything that Darryl Clarke's doing at the minute is with more limited resources, I would certainly argue. But you've got to find a way. It's football. You've got to find a way to keep things ticking along. And look, the risk and reward is there that if Barnsley can get on a roll and can support Darryl with a couple more improvements, then the playoffs isn't out of bounds this year. I think it's a harder ask than the last 2 years for the reasons I've just mentioned and the fact that other clubs are stronger this year. But I don't think you can rule out a playoff push. But right now, if you're holding a gun to my head, I think you're probably looking at those group of teams just outside the top 6. Could they? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think it's certainly not as much of a given, not a given, but as a realistic hope as it was the last 2 years.
Steve, what would these fan engagements? I know. We don't attend. If you had an opportunity to sit down, what would be the burning questions for you? Because a lot of people were talking about stuff other than on the pitch, which I suppose you can't always influence. But people were talking about queues and transport and car park and gauge, and what would be your question? Because sometimes I sit there and think people have got a ticket and they're free. Don't get me wrong, and then they ask a question and I think, what do you expect? You know what I mean? What would be your burning question?
Would I have a burning question? I mean, the thing is, you've said it already. You can ask whatever question you want, but you're not going to get the answer you want 9 times out of 10. You're going to get the politically correct answer that they want to give out. And I only watched probably 5 minutes, if that, and turned it off because they were talking about price of pies and chips and stuff like that, and whether they were going to get a drink and whether they were going to get a special offer and this, that, and other. And I'm not being funny. People are set in the ways. If it's a Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff, which are few and far between at minute, bit looks at it, a lot of people, they're going into town for a few beers to start with. They're not going to go straight down at club at 11 o'clock and drink all for the next 3 hours in club. Let's be realistic. And I think just some people have way too much time on their hands to come up with bullshit questions that have got no relevance whatsoever. If I could ask a question and think that I might get a straight answer, I suppose my question would be, realistically, what is your picture of the club in next 5 years, 10 years' time? Where do you really think that you want us to be? And they're going to say, oh, yeah, we want to be this, and we're pushing for Premiership and blah, blah, blah. Don't give me a bullshit answer. Be honest. You're having to put money in every year because we're not self-sustaining. There's not many football clubs that are self-sustaining. It's a business.
Yeah.
Be honest, which you won't be, but be honest and say, 5 years, 10 years' time, where do you realistically think we would be? And I'm sorry, but I think we'll still be either here, where we are in First Division, flirt with Championship as we always do, but that's about it.
Yeah. And then, if you do go up, you then need to, because it's another mega step up, is what you've achieve promotion with enough to sustain that next level, because that's where club become unstuck. And looking at the table, because it's FA Cup weekend, talk about FA Cup in a minute. I mean, Birmingham at the top, I think most of us would have probably, we're not betting people, but put your mortgage on. And they're doing as expected. Wickham in second is probably a surprise, because Wickham normally you would find at the other end of the table.
Yep.
Wrexham in third, the fairy tale continues. And then Mansfield, Lincoln, and Bolton. Bolton with a bit of a late run, because his job was, well, he was almost out of the door. And then turned it around, And Barnsley find themselves on 22 points. That's same as Huddersfield and Reading, and on goal difference currently 8th, which you'd probably take as a Barnsley fan, wouldn't you? After 13 matches.
Yeah, but you look at points, and I'm not being funny. 2 wins, and you're looking second or third. It's that close. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. What it needs is somebody to take bull by horns and push on, and they'll be up there come end of season. But no, nobody expected your Wickhams and your Lincolns being up there. But all power to them. Why not?
And the other side of the coin, of course, I know Ian tipped Wigan, to do really well. They're in 19th.
That tells you something, doesn't it, from them people over at Pennines?
Yeah,
too much.
Maybe it's a good job he's not here tonight, because he said Wigan.
Don't tell him, will you? Don't tell him I said out.
He never listens anyway. And Rotherham in 14th, Adam, and I know for Rotherham, there seems to be a lot of talk about Steve Evans at the moment and antics and everything else. But from a footballer point of view, listen, they're on 17 points. It's not like they're miles off. But, you're already 12 points behind the lead. And I know there'll be a spare. Rotherham, for a lot of people, were, and listen, I know we're only... is the pressure on Steve Evans, do you think?
There will be. Yeah, I mean, look, I was one of those people that had Rotherham pegged as definite top 6 pushing for top 2 this season before it started. And with the calibre of the players that they recruited, with some league winners last year from Portsmouth and Clark Harris coming in and Liam Kelly coming in from Coventry and other new signings as well, I think there was a real... hope and expectation really from a Rotherham perspective that they would be in that mix, and it's not gone to plan so far. Obviously I had that rather interesting exchange with Mr. Evans after the 1-0 defeat at Leyton Orient the other week that took social media by storm, because Steve thought I was very negative in my questioning. But the supporters said everything that they needed to at the full-time whistle. They weren't happy at all. The performance was poor against a Leyton Orient team that hadn't won it at home so far that season. And yes, there are a couple of their bigger signings like Sean Raggett and Johnson Clark Harris who are out at the minute. You'll always miss your bigger players, but with the squad that they've got, they should be doing better than what they are. Look, Steve Evans, what can we say about Steve Evans? Well, in his previous time at Rotherham, it was a slow start and then they picked up. And no doubt he will have plans to add more in January. And look, the signs that they're starting to kind of click into gear a little bit. There's some good players there. I still wouldn't bet against them not being in the top 6 this season, but right now there's not a lot between Barnsley and Rotherham, and I had Rotherham pegged as being above Barnsley in the table.
Well, interesting, because we've got Port Vale in the FA Cup now. I know the FA Cup and the tradition, and worldwide, I can remember as a tight, maybe not that big, maybe a bit big, but as a little lad sitting with my dad, I'm watching the BBC on a Saturday afternoon when it was like semi-finals or whatever. So Port Vale, Steve, as a Port Vale away, how would you approach it? We don't know Darrell Clark approach. How would you approach that? Would that be again a mixture because you don't want to risk any injuries, or do you say it's a cup, it's money as well? Of course, we need to get as far as we can. Is it first team? Business as usual? Is it more towards the Bristol Street Trophy and some of those, fringe players? Because Port Vale doing really well in League Two at the moment, obviously, so it won't be a pushover.
It needs first team. It needs your best 11 players, is what it needs. Because let's face it, they're on about trying to get more people into Oakwell and make some more money. Oh, go and win and get into the next round at FA Cup then. That's what's going to bring people in. Play some attractive football. That's what's going to bring people in. Score some goals. That's what's going to bring people in. So, no, I think there is one or two, I've got to say, from Donny game. I know it were a note game and whatever. Jürgen Nathan were absolutely head and shoulders above anybody else. He played really, really well, and he were better than some Donny players. So, fingers out, look. Where's that finger going?
Can we give a special mention to Grant McCann's son?
Bailey McCann. He spoke very well. I've spoken to Grant today, obviously, about it, and he wasn't sure whether he was going to play, and then he looked at his missus, and she kind of had an inkling, and he found it very strange as an experience. But he said Bailey did very well. He said he was very, very pleased with how he did.
And obviously, it's and I don't do. It's second time this year that a Barnsley player or a member of staff has come up again. So Martin Devaney came up with his son in Man
United youngsters,
yeah, and now Bailey McCann. But obviously, there's a lot of ex-players, Barnsley players, who have their children in the Barnsley Academy, and that's Kosluk's son is there as well, I believe. Kosluk is a regular visitor at Oakwell. So Kosluk, the Dyer. So the FA Cup, it needs to be the full team. We'll talk more about it next week, but because that is, of course, the next league match for Barnsley. Friday night, under the lights.
7:15. 7:15. Who's come up with that? 7:15. What sort of time's that for kicking off football? Unbelievable.
A stupid one.
Yeah. I'll be on the way to Portsmouth. I'm going down to see my daughter for the weekend. So, are you? First of all, are you on FM commentary or DAB commentary that evening? Adam, I need to know because
they'll be on everything, mate. They'll be on everything.
I like it.
Can I ask you though, Adam? Just going back to Donny game.
Yeah.
How are you going to be pronouncing that young gentleman's name if he plays?
Which young gentleman?
Well, that guy who were doing reporting on match on Tuesday night or whenever it was, we're calling him Jorgenathan.
Oh, right, okay. Well, Jorgenathan is what I've
that's right, I said. But we're coming out with some really
okay. Well, no, Jorgenathan, I've been impressed with him. I like him. I think it's great to see a variety of players knocking on the door, and he's certainly worthy of some league minutes and whatever else. But I'll back you, Steve. I think got to go strong at Port Vale. Darryl Clark's whole team. I don't think there's anything to be gained in fielding a weakened team, particularly with 6 days before the next game. Just go for it. Get in the next round. Get into that third round. Get one of the big boys or whatever. Get a payday, and have some fun with it. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a bit of momentum, isn't it? We need to keep this momentum going now. Let's build on it.
Yeah, 100%. And then to finish off, I can see you're wearing the shirt, Adam, because today signifies another milestone.
That. Very good.
In your fundraising. Before I ask you, the club, Darryl Clark, Horahan, quite a few of the staff have done very similar, pledge to do X amount of miles, runnings, whatever they do, which was on, we shared it on Twitter because you could support the team. Adam, so what have you been doing then for, and it was it for prostate cancer awareness, I take it, yeah?
Yeah, so this is the Prostate United Challenge, which started with just two blokes at Rotherham back in 2018 called Ross Burberry and Stephen Gilpin. Stephen's granddad had been diagnosed with prostate cancer, so they started doing 10K a day for November, as it was back then. And it's basically now in its 7th year. It's just been done. I've done it for 4 years now in terms of actually running, but I've covered it for a little bit longer. First year that I've done 10K a day this year. It's been tough from a physical, mental, mainly logistical perspective, and had the pleasure of doing the final run today with all the Doncaster staff. So Grant McCann, former Barnsley player, as we all know, They have absolutely smashed it. Donny have topped the fundraising table for the second year in a row. They've raised double the amount of any other club singly, over £33,000. Sheffield Wednesday this year have got involved with Chris Powell being there as a prostate cancer ambassador, and they've raised 17 grand. But look, Sheffield United, Rotherham, Barnsley, well, particularly those three have supported this challenge for a number of years. It's been great because Darryl Clark's done it this year. Chris Wilder's done it this year. You know, there's been some higher profile people locally doing it. And we are, the royal we from the challenge, are hopeful that it's going to pass £1 million at some point over the next few days, basically since it started in 2018 collectively through to now. So this year it's knocking on £300,000 in total. I've raised £1,000 myself already, which has been amazing. Obviously, I lost my dad to prostate cancer, which is why this particular challenge means a lot, and why my wife struggles to stop me doing it, even though she would love to stop me doing it.
Is it to get out to the feeding time for the twins?
Well, it just honestly, like when you like, so my times are around an hour for a 10K, and then you've got warm up, you've got obviously logistics of getting it ready. If you're going out somewhere, that's time. Then you've got to have a shower. It's just time out your day, and that's the hardest bit of it. And I've tried to do it early morning, late night, after work to try and have as little impact as possible, but it doesn't. So a very uplifting, very inspiring, and great that Barnsley once again have thrown a lot. We had Tom Harben live on Radio Sheffield as part of a bit of a trip round all the clubs 6 till 7 tonight, and he's the lead academy coach at Barnsley, who's got involved and done 5K running. So great challenge to be a part of. Obviously, it means a lot to me, and it's the first year that all 5 South Yorkshire teams have properly thrown behind it this year. So
very good.
It's moving, and it's a very it's a special thing to be a part of.
Right, huge well done to everybody at all the clubs, and obviously you as well, because I know what it means to you, and to complete that, and that's no mean feat. Because I'm thinking like 10K. That's like, I'm just thinking, Steve, how many rounds of the golf course is that for you?
For me, far too many, mate. Get on a buggy. That's what you want. None of that messing about. I was thinking, though, that advert that's on telly at minute, because it's Movember.
Yes, coming up, yeah.
Movember, obviously. And they're all there chanting more, more, more. I think we ought to move away from Moo Reds and move on to Mo Reds.
Very good. I've done Movember a few times in the past as well, because that's more wider on sort of men's health. Yeah. It talks about prostate cancer, mental health, testicular cancer, and a few other things. So I have... the last time I did that was in the year my dad passed, actually, and I ended up looking like Ned Flanders by the end of the week, which was a particular delight. I think my missus is very, very pleased that I do the running now rather than
Yeah, I get that.
If I had to choose, well, it wouldn't be the running, would it? I can't walk straight, never mind anything else at the moment. Boys, thank you both very much. Barnsley Port Vale, FA Cup. Steve, here we go.
Come on.
Barnsley goal scorer. You can't go 3-1 on Devante Cole because he no longer plays for us. Anyway.
He no longer plays for anybody, does he? Let's face it.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
2-0, Humphreys, for me.
Right. I'll go, because I'm unsure whether he'll play a full first team or not. I'll go for a draw, and I think that might come back to haunt us, but I'll go for a draw. Was it this time last year we had Horsham? I think it was, wasn't it, in the first round?
Yeah, less said about that, the better, though, Carlo.
Yeah. So let's hope everybody that plays is eligible to play, first of all. I'll go for a score draw. I'll go for 2-2 with a replay to be played in a couple of weeks' time, and we'll worry about that when it comes round. Adam, listen, of course, I want a Barnsley win, but I just always have this lower league, and it's only one league below, and I know they're doing really well.
Doing really well. Darren Moore's got them moving, because when he first went there last year, they were really struggling, and there were a few people that would have probably thought he might not have been there now, and he signed a long-term contract. So I'm delighted for him, because I got to know him, obviously, in his time at Wednesday and Donny, and he's an absolute diamond of a bloke. But hopefully he'll lose this weekend. And I think Barnsley will go. I mean, they'll fancy it because they're on a good run in the league. But look, Barnsley have got some momentum at the minute, so narrow win for me, little 2-1 or something, and we'll go Big Donovan for an FA Cup goal.
Oh, why not?
What about next Friday then? Seeing as
Well,
we'll
we'll
not
do
see you before.
We'll do that next week. And what we might do, we'll check Adam's availability.
Why is he coming on? Is he going to? Oh, okay.
So, and then, so we'll do that one next week.
Don't
so.
you bottle it next week then, Adam, will you?
I'll answer it now for you if you want. I mean, look, I'd back a narrow Barnsley win. I mean, Barnsley haven't been good at home this season, by and large.
Not by a long way.
But look, momentum's with them, and with Rotherham at the minute. Look, yeah, it'll be a great game. It'll be a really good game. I mean, both teams have got aspirations. It'll be a good game.
Who's Rotherham got in the FA Cup this weekend?
They've got Cheltenham at home. So yes, Cheltenham at home, which is about as dull an FA Cup game as you could possibly get.
And what are you covering this weekend?
I have a weekend off this weekend, which is quite pleasant, which doesn't happen very often after all the running, because I'm doing a Children in Need swimming challenge as well next week, which you might have seen some stuff popping up about. So swimming all next week. And then obviously we've got derbies galore across the patch next week. So a little bit of downtime this weekend before more madness ensues.
Excellent. But honestly though, when you're off and it gets to 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, can you stay away from it? Because I know
nobody can. Nobody can. That's the whole fun of the fair, isn't it? That's why we love it.
Yeah. Well, enjoy your weekend off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next week we'll do the big preview on Rotherham. So I'll message you later in the week. But if you're available, Adam, that'd be really good because
happy to.
You can give us the insider on. So thank you and enjoy your weekend, Steve. Always good to see you. I'm back in Barnsley because we're live from, I can't even say sunny Ingermells because it's been foggy all day. I got off the ferry this morning at 7:30 from Hull, straight to sunny Ingermells. Heating's on. I've got 4 jackets on and a jumper, but I'll be fine. I'm coming home on
It's
Sunday.
funny actually because I thought I'd forgotten you were in van because I was going to say I see you put some cupboards up in bedroom, but you're at caravan, aren't you?
I'm sat. My laptop, and I can't even show. My laptop is on top of Chad's suitcase, which is a hardback Donald Duck suitcase. So
Beautiful.
I can sit on the mattress because otherwise it'd be like that. So yeah.
No, I don't want to look at that. Put that away.
No, you don't. No, next week I'll be back home. So we'll do the big preview next week. Adam, thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend off. Steve, you'll talk to you soon. Thanks very much for listening. Part of the TalkSport and Networks of Fans. This has been the Reds Report. You Reds.